आपादमौलिपर्यन्तां गुरूणामाकृतिं स्मरेति न विघ्नप्रणश्यन्ति च भगवतः लक्ष्मीं तनोतु नितरामितरानपेक्षमङ्गृध्वयं निगमशाक्षिकाप्रवालं भैरम्बमन्दुर्हडम्बरचौर्यनिक्रमविघ्नातिविहेदशतधारधुरन्धरन् सर्वेषां स्वागतम्. So for the 10th shloka, we are at the positive psychology session. So in this, it is a continuation because as I did mention, the concept here is the same, but we go a little deeper into it. So we learned about learned ignorance in the previous two sessions, learned helplessness, a little more expansion on learned ignorance. So now the question when we have here, Nagnana Hanirna Nacharaga Samshaya, when we have come to the 10th one, we are trying to point out the dosha in karma. And why is this important? Because one way to get rid of learned ignorance, as I have already explained, is when I know I am ignorant about something, yet I am not doing anything about it. To get rid of it. So keeping this in mind, here, how do I get rid of it? This is the most important thing. So first thing is self-reflection. I cannot have a prejudiced mind when I am trying to learn something new. Therefore, I need to give up my premonitions. I need to give up whatever I'm thinking. Because as explained, because I have a prejudiced mind, my brain will start collecting only that information that will strengthen my thought. There may be many thoughts that is opposing my understanding of it. But as long as I hold on to my own understanding of it, or as long as I hold on to my verdict of it, I will not be able to uh, collect or receive all those information that may show the reality of the situation. So there is all that glitters is not gold. All those so famous proverbs are also there. So what they are trying to say is simply that when I think that glittering is always associated with gold, this is my preconceived knowledge. When I already have this, when I don't let go of this, I will obviously equate anything that shines with gold. And therefore, even if there is something that shines and it isn't gold, I'm not able to take that in. I'm not able to receive that knowledge. That is the truth of the particular uh, reality. So self-reflection is to recognize one's own biases and assumptions. So we talked about Rama in the previous this thing. So the particular reason why I try to bring this try to get rid of this learned ignorance is that when in the context of Rama, I've already said this, there is no way he can justify what he did. Because exiling Sita might have been the biggest kalanka for Purushottama. Nobody will ever say he did a good thing for that. There may be acceptance as say, okay, there may be a higher reason to it, that might be there. But nobody will say he did a good thing because the question will always be, what did Sita do to deserve this? This will always be the initiation. Now, out of all the context, without what is right or wrong is always up to perceptions, up to social perceptions. So now there might be reasons, and I'm not going to talk about the reasons. Rama did this because it was already premeditated. It was because Sita wanted to. All those things are reasons. But what we have to talk about is that when we are trying to understand something, when we are trying to understand as seekers, when we are trying to understand why Rama did something like this, then we cannot judge the act. We have to allow ourselves open to any kind of knowledge that is relevant to that particular act. Any kind of knowledge, whether be it from different authors, whether be it from different perspectives, everything we have to allow ourselves to think. Because that is the only way where we understand how others have perceived it, how the scriptures have perceived it, because scriptures justify later on. Scriptures will justify later on. That is, those are the reasons. But those reasons, as I said, it is a time limited relevancy is given to it. If that reason was probably quoted somewhere in Dwapara Yuga, that the wide gained acceptance that Rama was the avatar of Vishnu would have made the writers of the or the author of those shlokas, they would have been saying, okay, he's anyway, everybody believes that he's a god. There is no need to justify it to an extent where a normal man would have done it. Then I would have needed a lengthy explanation that I don't need to do it in case of Rama. We'll just say, okay, it was premeditated. It was his Leela. That will happen. So the time relevancy is also extremely important. So this is a very important for some people. It is a important information. At what point of time was the Uttara Ramayana, Uttarakanda of Valmiki Ramayana added? When was it written? Because if it was written immediately, then there would have been a lengthy conversation. Because, like I said, when we go to Yuddhakanda, Rama seeks Agni Pariksha. At that point of time, the whole conversation it goes on for I think 20, 10, 20, maybe 108 to 130, 10, 20 sargas it goes along. Just the conversations, just whatever has happened from the time Sita comes from Ashokvana to meet Rama. From that point onwards, the whole thing it goes around 20 sargas, because it is as it is happening. There is no space for us to think. But when we go to Uttara Ramayana, the explain if it is from a different time period because of the acceptance of a certain act, because of the acceptance of a popular example for this would be um, the genocide in the World War II. Hitler will never be able to justify it of the genocide of killing so many people. He will never be able to justify it. But today we are looking at it after 70, 80 years from the point of time where it actually started. At that point of time, what was the views? There was very popular, unpopular sentiment towards Jews. Even today, they might be because if you look at um, the plays written, they always used to put Jews in a negative role, be it the Jew of Malta, merchant of Venice, etc., etc., etc. So this shows the social thought that existed at that point of time. The genocide actually was probably a culmination of the thought that existed. I'm not talking about Hitler in general over here. There is a progression of the thought. It existed. The negative views about Jews existed before that. But what was the tipping point towards genocide? And Hitler can reason it. He says that I had this experience where I don't trust Jews anymore. He can reason it, but it cannot be justified. The act cannot be justified. So, in the same way, we cannot justify that act. But when we go back to that point of time, when we go back to that point of time, and then we try to understand what has happened, that gives us a reason. That gives us a reason, and this reason may not be sufficient. It will never be sufficient if we have a tainted mind. That means if I have already made a judgment, then it will never be able to give me that solace that okay, there was a reason that existed. It still may not be, even if I'm of no prejudice also, if I get that reason also, I'll not be say there could have been other vikalpa. I'll always think in that way. Once I have made a decision that something is wrong, what Rama did is wrong, and there is no possibility of somebody expressing a view where he did it is just dharma, where I keep saying now the popular argument is with respect to Rajadharma and Kshatra dharma and dharma to his own wife as a husband. Question is, which of the two is bigger? Which of the two is important? So some people say he did it for Raj dharma. The question occurs: how can he do this to his own wife? Then how, if he is not a fair king? So there, um, the problem is simply that once I have made a decision that what he did is wrong, I have accepted a particular scenario that no argument against it, that is, no argument given to me, no reason given justifying his action will never be good for me to say that he had a valid reason. I'm not saying he had a valid reason, but there comes a scenario where I have already given up on that acceptance, which practically means that there is no point in searching for it. There is no point in being a seeker. There is no point in searching for it because I have already decided that what he did was wrong. I have already decided that any argument that you give me, any argument that you say that he may have to select, he was in a state where he had to select between two decisions and he did it for the greater good, and there will still be judgment if I am coming from a state of judgment, then I will still say that he could have still done this, he could have still done that, which means I am not ready to accept that an argument may have validity to changing my notion, which means there's no point in seeking the answer for it. There is no point in seeking the answer for it. A popular example would be with respect to the 26/11 attacks. A terrorist was caught. He was, a a case ran against him, and then he was hanged to death. Now, there were many accounts which tried to humanize this particular incident, saying that, oh, he grew up from a particularly very poor background, and then he was handed over to the terrorist organization because his parents could not uh, take care of him, and then they brainwashed him, so he did not get a free will to understand anything in his own way. So therefore he was filled with he they brainwashed him with hatred against the country, and therefore he did what he did. This is reasoning. Can we, however, take this reasoning and say that what he did when he claimed so many lives, that is justified? We can't say that. So therefore what Rama did cannot be justified. Even he cannot justify it. But trying to understand why that decision had to be taken, this involves complete shut off from the preconceived notions. We have to keep it aside. Only when we keep it aside, then we will get two scenarios. Not this, but generally, we get two scenarios. One is that what was the person thinking? Why did he feel that action he will be able to justify? Because I cannot I cannot do something that I cannot justify. So the person must have thought that he could justify that act, right? How can a person justify that he had killed some people? He should have thought that I am doing this for the greater good. What was that thought? Why did he feel that way? This is one thing. Second is, had he not done that, had he taken the alternative decision, that is, what would have been the outcome? These two scenarios require complete calmness of mind and complete uh, removal from prejudice. Only when we do that, we'll get the answer. So this is for any seeker who's thinking of anything. It can be generally associated. The only way of getting rid of learned ignorance first is through self-reflection. Are we, see, the point is we are thinking about Rama. Some people will say, never talk about Rama. What qualification do you have? People who are conservative would say that, what qualification do you have to question him? Some people would take up his previous qualification, say that, no, he did so many things. What have you done? Comparison is there. Second is simply that to find an answer to something that did not happen today, to find an answer to something that I was not privy to find an answer to something for which I was not a part of. I should not have any preconceived notions. I should not have any judgment. Only then will I be able to understand what had happened. Understand what had happened. I'm not saying that we have to accept it. Understand. There's a difference. I cannot accept that Rama exiled Sita. That is separate. That is a principle that I have grown up with. That is a principle that I've grown up with. I'm saying I because I'm just trying to say that people are there who are in different sections who will think that way. They may have that preconceived notion saying that I can never accept what he did. Fine, you don't have to accept it. You need to live with it. This is the difference. Because if I do not accept it, it practically means that it is against my principle. So I will never do that in my life, or I will be averse to taking such decisions. So I may have different options. But when I cannot live with it, what happens is it keeps fixating in my mind. That will tarnish the complete experience of Ramayana. Because of this one incident, all the other gunas, all the other gunas of Rama will be diluted, will be ignored. Any tattva that even if he's teaching something good also, we will not look at it. Only because of one thing that I have decided that it is unacceptable to me. This one reason is why we need to make sure that we recognize our own bias and assumptions. So how to get rid of learned ignorance? First, we have to question ourselves. Why am I so averse to that idea? Why am I averse to an idea that there can be an argument that can justify Rama's actions? What is the personal stake over here? Why am I getting so attached to it? Maybe I'm thinking from a perspective of a feminist. Maybe I'm thinking of it from the perspective of a family man. Therefore, I'm averse to it. So I have my biases. I have my knowledge gaps. I have my motivations to decide something in a certain way. Recognizing that is extremely important. So that is self-reflection. The other thing, knowledge and exposure. Ramayana is a huge ocean. It has been written, rewritten so many times. Some versions don't even quote this. Some versions do quote this. So question occurs, what is the chronology? Which one should I give more importance to? If I do give more importance to Uttarakanda, which version of Uttarakanda is more precise? Some of them don't even quote it. Question occurs. I gave the story that is given in one one script. The story in different scripts are different. It comes in a different way. So that story itself is not clear, by the way. So that it occurs that we have to first understand, we have to expose ourselves to different knowledge, different sources, different data points. And that we can only allow when we don't have any judgment. Critical thinking. This is another way of getting rid of learned ignorance. What is critical thinking? Question your assumptions. Why are you assuming that he did something wrong? Because the act was something that you cannot deal with it. I'm not saying what he did was right. I'm just, the popular train of thought is that he did something wrong. Therefore, question your assumptions. Why are you assuming that something is wrong? Why are you assuming that there is no argument that can justify his action? Which means you're coming from a place of bias, which means there is no point in seeking an answer for it. There's no point in seeking an answer for it. When we have decided that something has happened for some, when we have decided that is wrong, how can we find an answer why it happened? Because we have already, the conclusion, it should always be the reason, the act, and then the conclusion. If I'm going from the conclusion, there's no point in going through this. It's like learning something for an examination. The point is to the exam point of an examination is to test your knowledge. If I'm learning only for the examination, and if I clear that examination, there's no point in gaining that knowledge. What is the point in learning the whole of science and mathematics, trigonometry, all those things when I pass my examination? I don't need it, no. Exam should be a test of the knowledge that we have learned, we have gained. It should not be the other way around. So we need to make sure that this is understood clearly. Critical thinking, analyze the information that we have, evaluate the evidence. Then we have mindfulness and curiosity. This is another whole topic, so we will not talk about this. Yes, and satsanga. Share the ideas. Don't impose them. That is one important thing. Share the idea. Questioning is never wrong. None of our shastras say that we shouldn't question anything. In fact, our shastras always say only when a person questions, he'll get the answer. Unless Arjuna asks, Bhagavan, tell me what is the nature of true Brahman, he will not give you the answer. So therefore, questioning is always welcome in our scriptures. But questioning without prejudice is extremely important. How can I teach someone an astic that there is Brahman when he has already decided? If he is a true jignasu, he will inquire what can be there. That can be answered. If the person is hell bent on saying that there is no God, how can I tell him that there is God? Any argument that I give him, it's called as Vitandavada. Any argument that I'll give him, he will never accept it. He will try to find a scientific source for that. So we need to understand that critical thinking is extremely important, and critical thinking basically questioning our assumptions, our own assumptions, analyzing the information that we have, and evaluating the evidence that we have is important. Some people say, what difference does it make that some of the versions do not show Uttarakanda? It did happen. How do we know that it happened as it has been depicted itself? There are different ways. This is my experience. There is a book on Indian independence. This was by a journalist, a veteran journalist who was also the first chief minister of Kerala. Nambudripad, his name is, yes. So EMS Nambudripad, initials, I'm not sure. So he was a journalist in a newspaper called as Matrubhumi, and then he has recorded, as the independence movement of India unfurled, he has recorded it that way, which he has compiled, which was later compiled, I think, in 1976 or something. And that whole compilation comes up to 900 pages. The way as it happened, he has recorded it as articles and all those things in that newspaper, and that has been compiled, his writings, and it has been made a book, which is a very good documentation of what happened in India. And then the current, if we look at the Indian struggle or whatever, the books that explain that, there is obviously a difference in the way that is narrated and this is narrated. Because a post-mortem analysis will do whatever is important, what led to, there might have been 100 different revolts, there might have been 100 different actions saying that we try to do this, like the Swatantra Party. That was when Mr. Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was in jail. They had to reignite the Indian independence movement. Therefore, Deshbandhu Chittaranjan Das and I think Mr. Motilal Nehru, they started a party called a Swatantra Party, but it couldn't lead anything and it ended. So is that not relevant then? It is relevant. Today, not many of the current literature speaks about it because it didn't lead to anything, but it did keep the freedom movement alive. When this person who was spearheading the freedom movement was in jail, it served a purpose. So now they have, after the whole complete freedom movement is over, we've got independence and all those things has happened. Now in the end, when we look at it, we say, okay, this, what is the point of telling people that we started a party that couldn't lead anywhere? Let us eliminate it. There are many things that could have happened. So understanding at what time that Uttara Ramayana was written is extremely crucial. Some people say the washerman was gossiping. Some people say that somebody conveyed his fight with his wife to Rama. Somebody says something. There are so many ways, which means what was the consideration that Rama is getting? What was the point? Why he had to take that decision? Why did he even consider that decision? Right question is important, right? If it was leading to lawlessness, there is Raja Dharma involved. If it is somebody gossiping, why should he listen to that? He has already proved it through Agni Pariksha, no? That was the whole point of it. So, it is important to question your sources. That is the reason we have to evaluate the evidence. It is extremely important. So, with this, learn how to get rid of learned ignorance. It comes into play when we are talking about the 10th shloka. It is in particular bringing up the dosha of karma. Why we are bringing up the dosha of karma? Because we know what our target is. We know what questions Lakshmana asked, and Lakshmana asked this. When Lakshmana asked this, Rama is giving an explanation why it is possible, how it is possible. And then the question, he's following that same train of thought where people start asking, can't I approach sannyasa when when I'm a samsari only? What is the problem? So he's giving the dosha. This is the dosha. What problem does having a prejudice do? That is the problem. It brings about confirmation bias. Any evidence that I take up will always say that what I'm thinking only is correct. That is the most important thing. Learning this gets rid of ignorance. Therefore, understanding that the dosha of karma is that neither does it kill ajnana, nor does it reduce our raga dvesha. That understand, and it leads to punaha. Punaha Samskriti api avarita. That means the attachment or the involvement in samsara will also not reduce. These being the doshas of karma, thus I have to make sure I need to get detachment. Then when I realize this, tasmat buddho jnana vicharavan bhavet. Then I get the enlightenment of what or in which direction I should go for true knowledge, what question I should ask for true knowledge. This is a quest. The quest can only lead to what we are looking for when we solve all the clues. If we do not consider them at any point of time, if we become adamant and we say, I am sick of this, give me the answer right now, we will not find that answer. That is the reason we need to be very patient and we need to try to get rid of learned ignorance. So this is what is given in this verse of Sri Rama Gita. So with this, we end the positive psychology session. स्वस्ति प्रजाभ्यः प्रतिपालयन्तां न्यायेन मार्गेण महीमहीषा गोब्राह्मणेभ्यो शुभमस्तु नित्यं लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु कायेन वाचा मनसेन्द्रियैर्वा बुद्ध्यात्मना वा प्रकृते स्वभावात् करोमि यद्यत् सकलं परस्मै नारायणायेति समर्पयामि.